Hi, I'm Owen, the host of the Australian Finance Podcast. This podcast is proudly sponsored by BetaShares, one of the leading providers of ETFs here in Australia. Serving thousands of financial advisors and over 1 million investors, BetaShares manages tens of billions of dollars on behalf of investors right across the country. I'm proud to partner with BetaShares on the Australian Finance Podcast, Australia's premier financial podcast, because there is great alignment in the long-term philosophy shared by both businesses. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast. Queenie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's always good to chat.
I know, I'm really excited.
You bring the fun, and in particular, we're going to be talking about that today. So we're going to talk about your new book, about your business, about everything. So if people don't know, they can find you online. There's plenty of resources in the show notes for this episode. I'd like to start off with the first kind of chapter, the introduction, so to speak, of your book, where you talk about the money stories or the kind of perspectives, let's say, that your parents had with money and how you kind of interpreted that and how you interacted with them when it comes to money earlier in your life.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think that it's my whole reason for actually becoming a finance creator and caring so much about money, because money was actually the main reason why my parents divorced. And it was interesting, like going back through it, I've realized like they both have really good perspectives when it comes to money, and they're both really important. So for context, I was actually raised by my dad, who was a single stay-at-home parent, and he had actually retired early, so he didn't need to work anymore. And it was kind of weird for me growing up because people would always ask me like, what do your parents do for a living? What do they do? And, I wouldn't really know what to say because he wasn't working, he was at home. And yeah, I also at the same time, I didn't feel like we were rich because, we went to public schools. My dad drove this really old car that used to really embarrass me. Like whenever he would pick me up, I'd just be like, so much shame. And I would also like get him to drop me off a few blocks away from school so I could walk myself. And, our house wasn't fancy at all. Like it was we didn't live in a fancy area either. And yeah, I never felt like we were rich, but I never felt like we didn't have enough money for the things that were really important. And I guess on the other perspective about money, so from him, I definitely learned that it's important to save and just the mindset of like how money can actually be quite enjoyable when you enjoy the process of building wealth, finding a bargain, those sorts of things. And my mom, even though she didn't live with us, she would come and stay with us from time to time. And I could really see in those visits just how different their money perspectives were. So for her, money was meant to be enjoyed. Like, what is the point in hoarding all of your money if you're never going to enjoy it? And she would spend her money on things that just make life more enjoyable. Whenever we would go out, she would buy me an ice cream from the convenience store, or she would do really long phone calls with her family, which back in the early 2000s were really expensive because they were priced like every 30 seconds. It was like a few dollars. So my dad would always flip out whenever he saw the phone bill, and like he would just, be very he would get really upset when like he saw my mom wasting money or like what he perceived to be wasting money. And I kind of was like caught between their two like conflicting perspectives, and I never really understood like why couldn't they just find a balance? Like they both have really good points. And I think the older I got, the more I realized like it's really important to have balance, because I kind of went through life where, I was a bit more like mom, much more free with money. But then I kind of found myself like at the end of each month, like not having much to show for it, like I'd spent all of the money that I earned basically. And I kind of had this uncomfortable feeling like I didn't want to be working forever. And then on the flip side, sometimes I would get too much into my dad's philosophy and just be so frugal, like ultra frugal. Oh, and honestly, I would like, I still remember I would go out with my friends for coffee and I wouldn't order anything when I was saving for my first home because I was so conscious of every single dollar that I spent, and it just felt like, it would take me further away from my goal if I spent like $5 on myself. So I definitely have had moments when I was too extreme one way, too extreme the other way, and I feel like it's just really important to have balance, and that's what this book is all about. So if you're somebody that is like, maybe you're a bit more, super frugal and you feel bad about spending money on yourself, then I hope this book can give you some I guess some tips on how you can reframe money and actually enjoy the process of spending it meaningfully on things that make you happy. And on the flip side, if you're somebody that kind of like maybe you can never see how some people get excited about money or building wealth or investing, like you just do not understand it, then I hope this book can give you some peace knowing that there actually are ways that you can make building wealth and the journey towards financial independence kind of fun and addicting in the best way. So yeah,
I like that. Was your first job at McDonald's?
Yeah, it was.
Because I read in the book that you were getting your $10 an hour or whatever it was, and that's when you kind of realized that maybe you could do more with money. There was like a moment where that happened. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so I got my first job when I was 14 at McDonald's, and I was really excited because for the first time I was earning my own money, and it just felt so good not having to ask my dad for money, because it was just like, it was a whole thing. If I needed $20 for something, or if I just wanted to go to the mall to watch a movie with my friends, my dad would be like, what are you going to use this money for? Like, blah, 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 blah. And it was just horrible. So I was so glad I could finally earn my own money and spend it on whatever I wanted. But yeah, on the flip side, I was spending like all of it. And although it did make me happy in the moment, a lot of the things that I spent money on was kind of wasted, like maybe on clothes that I didn't even wear anymore. Skincare I didn't even use. So I definitely started to learn a bit. It took me until I was about 19 to really get everything together when it came to finances. It was when I actually moved out of home, and money was really tight back then. I remember I was earning $400 a week, and I had to pay for rent and groceries and textbooks for uni, and it was just like, it was a very lean, very tight budget. And I think once I started to earn more money in my career, when I first got my first full-time job, I finally had a bit of money that I could put aside towards savings and investments. And I guess I was really lucky because I already knew what was possible in the world of investing. Like, I saw my dad not having to work. So I was like, maybe there is actually something in this, because you don't have to be so frugal, and you don't have to not enjoy yourself at all and don't spend any money, kind of a bit like how my dad was. Like, you don't have to be so extreme. You can have a bit of balance, but also I do see the point in setting yourself up for the future, so you don't have to be working in a job that you hate forever, and you don't have to feel that insecurity. I don't know, that insecurity that you feel, like just worrying, what if I'm fired one day? What if something happens? I never wanted to feel like that. So yeah, I started putting my money to work, and the rest is history. I never thought that I'd get to the point where I am today. But yeah, it's crazy.
Do you remember another thing you talk about in the book is a conversation, I think it was more recent maybe, a conversation you had with your dad? Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Can you relive that for us?
Yeah, of course. So it was actually the whole inspiration for the book. I didn't want to put a book out there that I wasn't super happy about and something that I felt like has already been said. But this one perspective, honestly, it blew my mind when I had my dad over for dinner one day, and we were both really excited talking about money, basically. So I was telling him about how I had just started an investment portfolio for my baby girl. She's 1 year old, and I started investing for her, and I was telling him like, oh my gosh, I've set up an investment portfolio for her, and I'm like putting a bit of money aside, so one day when she's old enough, she can have access to it. I was so excited. And then my dad was also saying like, oh yeah, like, the front yard is a bit of a mess, and I hate cleaning up, and like there are so many weeds, so I'm gonna hire a landscaper, and like they're gonna do all these things. And I called up these 3 different companies, and he was just basically talking about how he had this project, and he managed to find a really good landscaper that was a lot cheaper than the more expensive landscaper that he initially found. And it kind of hit me in that moment, like the way that I connect to my dad is basically about money, and like the joy of saving money, finding a bargain, building wealth. And it was kind of like the way that I imagine some people would talk to their dads about sport, or like something else that you might bond with your dad over. Like for me and my dad, it's like finding a bargain. Like I love telling him about like little ways to save money, and that's how we bond. And it made me realize like it's so important to have someone like that in your life in a way, like someone that you can talk to about money, whether it's a friend or a partner or just someone in your life that you can kind of like riff off and be like, oh, look, I'm saving for my first home. How exciting is that? And they might be able to tell you about what they're working on too. So I've realized that not everybody might have someone in their life like that. And that's why I wanted to write this book, to kind of show the process of how money can actually be fun and enjoyable. It's not all restriction and, not being able to go out and order a coffee. There's definitely a lot of fun and creativity that comes with it.
Yeah, for sure there is. And I think it's very Queenie, by the way, to put fun in the title of a book. When you think about like practical steps that people listening to this or watching this might be able to think, well, I can see how Queenie had that kind of self-reflection and that realization of her parents kind of like the values around money that they kind of instilled in you. If you were talking to someone that was like, oh, I don't know where my beliefs come from, what would you say to them?
Oh, okay. I would say it's really interesting, like reflecting on your own personal journey, because I feel like it gives us a lot of self-awareness, and we might realize like there could be some blind spots that we all have, like I'm definitely not perfect. Like I definitely have some flaws, some real big problems, but I do try to reflect on those things and see where things are coming from. So I would say have a look through your upbringing, your childhood, and see where those sort of beliefs come from. And also, if those beliefs that you maybe still have from childhood, are they actually even still, are they serving you now, because sometimes we might hold on to these beliefs. Maybe we had them when we were young. Maybe it's thoughts around scarcity or limiting beliefs around money. I know my upbringing, although we did have enough money for food and all of those things, I definitely held some like limiting beliefs around like basically not deserving to have nice things. So I remember over the past 10 years, it's been a bit of a journey of like allowing myself to enjoy nice things or be able to buy something just because I actually really want it and I really value it, and allowing myself to spend money on myself. Like I definitely had a lot of limiting beliefs, like thinking I had to buy the cheapest, nastiest things, or like because I didn't deserve to have nice things. So there might be some things like that where you could uncover that might not be serving you in your new life, and maybe letting go of some of those beliefs that aren't serving you anymore.
I really like that. Random question, which might put a bow on this for people. How much can you tell listeners what your net worth might be? Is that cool?
Yeah. It's pretty crazy because I don't want to just, I kind of feel a bit guilty about like, in a way, maybe I do still have some of those limiting beliefs or things holding me back, but I do feel like lucky and grateful to be in this position. But I don't want anyone listening to be like, oh my gosh, I'll never get there, because like you 100% can. So 5 years ago, which was, I've been investing for the past 10 years. So started when I was 19, basically completely broke, living outside of home on $400 a week. Like it was hard. 5 years from that point, 5 years later, I had bought my first home with my partner. My net worth was around $200,000, which was just amazing. And now 5 years later, my net worth is over $1 million, which is just crazy to me, because like I never thought I would be able to get to this point. Like it always felt like so far away. So it's strange. Sometimes when you start working towards your own financial goals, like you might think that first you might get a bit impatient. You might first start investing and be like, why aren't I a millionaire yet? What I've realized is things take time, but once you start putting in the work, you absolutely can get there. It might take a bit longer than you think, but then once you get to that point, it might feel like it's gone a lot quicker than you also expected as well at the same time. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, I think like Charlie Munger used to say the first million was the hardest, which is a bit of a funny joke. Even a million for most people is like super scary, right? 100,000 for a lot of people is scary. I tend to kind of dial it back. And I think like for most folks, if don't think about like full retirement, maybe think about $100,000 of net worth or $10,000 of net worth, just anything really, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. But like, I think for most people that listen to this show, I think the idea of $100,000 would be amazing for a lot of people. So to get to that point means that you also don't have as much debt as you do assets. So that's how you get to net worth, right? And I think that I know you do a lot of work with Perla, and as do we, but the social media game from Perla is awesome because there's they share these memes when it's that feeling when you get $2.42 hit your bank account from a dividend, and it's the fun part of that is everyone starts with $2 in dividends, right? But I feel once you get to $100,000, a 5% dividend yield is $5,000, and all of a sudden it's not $2.40 anymore. It's serious money, and you're I can really see this working. And as you go on, you get more and more into it, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? And I see that. I really see that, and particularly with people like yourself, like Tash, other great people that are educating people on that idea. I think that you can really see that playing out in the communities that you fostered as well, which is really nice to see.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the key is getting excited about those small wins, because at the time you might feel it's just $2, but that builds momentum, and it's just crazy. It's one of those things, the first $100,000 is the hardest, like you've mentioned, and then it just gets easier and easier. So if you can stick it out during that really difficult slog, which is the first $100,000, the next $100,000 is just going to be so much easier. It's really a snowball. The first 100,000 actually takes a third of the time to achieve. And so going from 100,000 to $1 million, you're already a third of the way to $1 million at that point. Isn't that crazy? Just because of how compound interest works.
And it's funny because what people don't realize, I find, about financial independence in general is that it's those first few years when it feels most liberating. You don't realize, you think it's more of a slog, but it's actually those first few years that it feels most liberating. Matt from Aussie Firebug used to talk about this quite a bit, where he said that you don't need $1 million to feel secure. You might only need $2,000, right? So for most people to get out of a bad situation, that's probably what they need. Maybe they need 5,000 or whatever, but you don't need $1 million. And so the feeling of getting to that is incredible for a lot of people. But the feeling of getting from $1 million to $1,002,000 is not really noticeable. No one really cares, right? So my point is that you get so much positive energy from the first amount of savings that you get. So people listening to this shouldn't be overwhelmed by the progress or the lack of progress, because that is empowering. And then you'll start to learn and you'll make mistakes, and that's okay, and you'll keep going. And I think that's all just part of the journey. I do have a question here, which you've talked to me about it before, but you're the only person that I've ever heard talk about this, maybe Pablo as well. This idea of a shadow self, and you talk about this in the book. What's that about?
Yeah, this is really interesting. I actually learned about this in therapy. So I was and I was curious about what is this that my therapist told me about. So I started doing more research into it, and it's really, really profound. So basically there was this psychologist, Carl Jung, who is a very famous psychologist. He basically coined this term. So basically we all have a self that we're happy to show to the world. So this might be the happy Owen podcast self that, he's happy to show this self to the world. But then there might be an Owen that is his shadow self that maybe he's not so comfortable showing to the world, and these could be the hidden desires or things that we just feel a bit uncomfortable to show the world. And they might not even be a bad thing. That's the thing about the shadow self. You think that it's embarrassing or shameful or whatever. That's why you hide it in your shadow self. But actually, when you start to tap into your shadow self, there are actually some really positive things about it. So yeah, I started to do a bit of self-reflection and what is this Queenie shadow self? What am I hiding away? And I think one thing that I was kind of embarrassed or felt a lot of shame around was just allowing myself to be a little bit selfish sometimes, I would always, and the way that you can actually see traits about your shadow self is look around and see what are the things that you judge about others, because the things that you think about others are basically a reflection on how you view yourself. So one thing that I would always judge people about is people that act what I deem as selfishly. So let's say we're at a restaurant and there's a bowl of chips in front of us and like there's one more chip and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I really want to take that last chip. I really do. But nope, someone wants it more than me. I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. And then I see you, Owen, and you take the last chip. I'm going to be thinking in my head like, I can't believe he did that. Like, what a selfish person. I would never do that. And like, but I think what I realized is I'm kind of a bit envious of people that are able to put themselves first sometimes. And not saying that I need to do this all the time or like but it's also like allowing myself to put myself first, I think is really important. So I've realized that that's something that I incorporate in my life. So now sometimes if I do need to put myself first, I do. It's still important to think about other people, but I shouldn't feel ashamed for doing those sorts of things as well. But yeah, it's really interesting. Was there anything that you've realized about yourself and like the shadow self?
As you were just talking, I was just trying to think, because that's a really good test of like, what do I judge other people for? I think I used to judge people for more so on the business side of things, for like being like really salesy. But now I'm kind of like, no, actually, I envy your ability to do that. People used to say to me in business, they used to say, you know your sales and your marketing is working when you feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I was like, I don't want to feel any uncomfortable, please, because I don't want to feel like it's cringeworthy. I don't want to feel like I'm really putting myself out there. But what I realized with sales and marketing in particular, Queenie, is that until you get to the point where it does feel uncomfortable, you get no sales. And if you stand 1 centimeter over that line, you get all the sales. And so it's like a serious power law. So I would always be like, hey, why is that person's business like 10 times more profitable than mine? Oh, it's because, they did this and this. Oh, I can't believe they did that. But then I realized I'm like, well, I should do a bit of that. Not all of it, but maybe like a bit of it. And that was a real transformation for me personally. I don't have a lot of, I think maybe, like we all think we're above average drivers. I think I'm very below average when it comes to judging people about money. So I think that like whether people have millions of dollars or like lots of debt, it's like I'm immune to it, Queenie. It's like I have no judgment whatsoever. So for me, I don't know if there's much of a shadow self in that regard. I mean, maybe there is, but it's more like I always judge people for the business decisions that they would make and maybe some of the investing decisions, because I think it's like maybe it's not ethical or maybe it's like I wouldn't own gambling stocks or something like that, But definitely on the business side, I can see like a shadow version of myself where I'm like, we could just charge so much more for these free courses. We could do that thing. We could take that sponsor on our show, and everyone else is doing it kind of thing. And that's kind of where that comes up. Speaking of the more business side of things, I don't know if we've spoken about this on the show. I don't think we have. You are not only an author now, you are also a founder. Can you tell us a bit about Billroo?
Yeah, of course. This is really exciting because I've always wanted to start my own sort of like app or software as a service company, but I haven't really, it took me a while to find the right idea. But I'm really excited about this one. The way we found the idea was we were basically doing interviews with some of our subscribers just to like chat, get to know them. And there was this one interview that we did, and there was this lady there, and she was so financially savvy. She had all of the apps, that I'm sure your listeners probably have on their phones too. She was investing regularly. She was looking at her portfolio. She was saving up for her first home. Like she was very financially savvy. But the one thing that she mentioned in passing, she was just like, but I haven't found a really good budgeting app yet. That was really interesting. Pablo was the one that actually remembered that. And after the call, he was like, she said this about how she couldn't find a budgeting app. That's interesting because we haven't found one either. And I was like, yeah, that's true, because we track our expenses, but at that time we were just using a spreadsheet because we tried so many out there and we couldn't find one that really stuck. So we started to dive a bit deeper into it. So first we launched like a free budgeting spreadsheet just to see how much of our audience was interested in budgeting. We had a few downloads of that spreadsheet, so we're like, okay, maybe there's a bit of traction there. And then we decided that we would, I used to work at a company, basically like a superannuation kind of like SaaS company. So I already knew developers and designers from that business. I reached out to this UX designer that I used to work with, and I asked her if she would help us with this new project, maybe like as a side hustle. She said yes, and we also started working with a developer at the same company, like one of my ex-colleagues as well. So that's when we started. Initially, we did have a bit of money saved that we were happy to invest into the business. We wanted to cap the budget at around like $20,000, $30,000, just because I knew that apps and like building software can get really, really expensive, and I didn't want to spend so much money without really seeing any traction first. So we decided we just do like an MVP, we'll launch it with this much. We started getting to work, and yeah, initially, I'm not going to lie to you, I thought it would be an overnight success. I thought it would be a hit. It did not. It was not a hit initially. There were lots of problems. I still remember the first workshop we did with some early users, and they were just trying to like import a CSV from their bank and like just see where their money went. And you would not believe how many problems there were.
Oh, right.
Yeah, people like, where do I get my like bank CSV, or like, why doesn't this CSV work? And we're like, oh yeah, I think the numbers and the dates are like not formatted right. And there are all these issues. And I just left feeling like, oh my gosh, there are so many problems. Like this is so much bigger than I thought. But we chipped away at it more and more. Now we're at a point where it's actually crazy. Like it took a lot longer than I thought to get here. So we've been working on it for about a year before we launched it. And then after launching it, we've been working on it for a year. So it's only been in market for like a year really. But yeah, we're at a good place where we've got quite a few customers now, a few thousand users. And I can really see like people are actually making real progress in their finances. Even one of the ladies from that workshop that we initially did, I didn't know this, but she sent me a message in WhatsApp, and she'd actually been using the tool ever since that day. She's been using it since then, and she just told me that since using the tool, it's changed her life. Like she had been able to pay off her student loans early and even save a deposit for her first home, which she thought would take years for her to do, both of those things. She's been able to do it in a year. And I was like, that's crazy. That's amazing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool that it's actually helping people. And it was expensive, but it was worth the investment. And I can see now it's actually starting to pay off, you know?
So what's the website if people wanted to check it out?
Yeah, it's billroo.com. We're building an app as well, which will be out in maybe a month or two. But yeah, currently it's just a web app at the moment.
Yeah, cool. That's great. So I had a question on this, which is a follow-up, and you kind of answered it there, but you obviously, so you can call yourself an author, founder, you know, content creator, whatever you want to call yourself basically now, investor, property owner, you know, which is also cool. But say if we just think about that business for a sec, a lot of people that listen to the show love the idea of entrepreneurialism. Some of them don't want to do it, but they just love the idea. And a lot of people are happy for other people to take entrepreneurial risk, like invest in other businesses and stuff like that on the share market or whatever. Do you think launching Billroo would have been possible had you not had like a good savings habit?
Yeah, I feel like it would have been a lot more difficult. And I'm so grateful that we did have, you know, a good amount of savings to actually invest into it. Yeah, I think it's really important. But also like we had started a lot of businesses in the past, maybe like 7 or 8 different little side hustles that didn't work. So we kind of knew we didn't put too much pressure on ourselves that, you know, I think a lot of people when they start like their first business, they're like, this is the one that's going to make me a millionaire. I'm going to not going to have to work anymore and da-da-da. But I think when you start a few businesses, you realize that maybe it's a great idea, but maybe for some reason it just doesn't work in practice, or maybe it was the execution and maybe you're not the one to execute it well. It's okay. I've definitely been there, lots of failed businesses, but I think you stop putting pressure on yourself and you start to see what works, what doesn't work. How can I tweak this so that it works? Or maybe there's another idea that could work better. So yeah, I'm all about it. I think start small, you know, if you're just starting out, just try a little bit and see where it takes you.
Yeah, I had speaking to someone who came through for financial advice the other day, and actually, James and I were speaking to him the other day, and we were just talking about the idea of like quarantining your money a bit. If you have a business or an idea, like giving yourself a budget to work to could be a really helpful thing. And it sounded like you did that as well with Billroo. Like you had like a specific target for you and Pablo to add to that pile of money or that business, a bank account, so that you could at least limit your risk while you were doing it, because you did know, and then you tested it with the MVPs and stuff. And finally, what's interesting about your answer, I think, is that a lot of people are multiple time business owners. Like I often find there's like a really common thread through people's lives that as a kid or something, they might have had like a lemonade stand, or a cliche or something. And then while they're at uni, they might have had a side hustle, or maybe they start after uni and they do something as a side hustle. And then they find that that turns into a business. And then a few years later, they do something else. You know, I often find that there's a lot of test and learn throughout people's lives. And we in Australia, I think, have a problem with that. We kind of see it as a failure, whereas overseas, starting and failing in the sense of like what I just described is actually seen as a real positive thing, because it's like you're trying things, which is really good. So I would encourage everyone to try things, but just quarantine, like limit your risk, which is, I think, so important. There's one question that I want to kind of get to, which is that you did mention before that budgets are often seen as about restriction. You've got this idea of the 3 Fs. Can you just take us through what that means?
Yeah, of course. So basically, I see them as 3 Fs of budgeting. So first you've got foundation, which is your foundational expenses. So things like rent, mortgage, groceries, transport, the things that you really just need to live, like your essentials, your bare necessities. Then you've got the fun stuff. And this is stuff that makes life worth living, like your cold brew coffee, which we have here.
Yeah, yes.
Your cold brew, your mochi donuts,
Yes,
things like that, like stuff that
gift.
makes fun, like life worth living. And then you've also got your freedom, which is basically the things that will buy you freedom in the future. So investments, savings, those sorts of things. And what I've realized over the past couple of years is it's really important to have a balance of all 3. So let's say, for example, you have foundation and you have freedom, but you have no fun. You might feel like you're just grinding it out. You're working so much, but you have like no fun experiences or anything to really show for it. You just feel like you're just living day by day. And I've definitely been there before. Like sometimes I used to make money and like saving for my goals like so depressing because I just would not spend any money on myself. And on the flip side, let's say, for example, you have foundation and you're fun, but you have no freedom. Like you might be enjoying life in the moment, but you've got this like voice in the back of your head that's just like, you're not really saving for your future. What are you going to do in 10 years? Maybe you'll have to be working forever. Like, do you really want to be living like this? And, you know, maybe you're also kind of burying your head in the sand, like not looking at how you've been spending your money, not like just not wanting to face it. And I've definitely been there before as well. Like I went through this stage where I just didn't check my expenses for like 3 months, and I spent so much more money than I ever thought. And I kind of knew that. That's why I didn't want to check my expenses, because I just didn't want to see it. And then when I saw it, it was like this sinking feeling of like, oh God, that was actually me. Nobody stole my credit card.
Yeah.
Like I actually did make all those dumb purchases. But then at least by looking at it, you can be like, okay, well, that's in the past. How am I going to set myself up for the future? Something I like to remind myself is regret is not trying to tell you what you should have done in the past. It's trying to tell you what you should do in the future. So if you regret spending money on something that didn't bring you value, it's not saying you shouldn't have spent that money. It's saying that you should not spend your money like that in the future. You should spend it on things that make you happy and things that bring you value. So it's important to have a balance of all 3.
Yeah, I really like that. I've got a couple more questions for you, but where could people get the book?
Yeah, so a few different places. So we're in bookstores, which is really exciting. I think the most easiest way for people to get it would be on Amazon, because it's very fast delivery and things like that. So yeah, if you just search the Fun Finance Formula, you can find it there.
Cool, the Fun Finance Formula. So I've got 2 final questions for you, which are two things that one is a topic that we could spend a whole podcast talking about, but I just wanted to kind of get you to give us the primer on it. They can read the book to learn more. And the second one is just a bit of fun. So what is a mini retirement?
Oh, okay. So a mini retirement is basically like, it's a new take on the whole like work from the ages of 18 to like 65 and like enjoy your life after 65. Like, what if we could have little mini retirements throughout life, like little mini sabbaticals where, say, you take off a bit of time from work and you go and travel, or even just like not have to work full time for like a whole year or like throughout your whole life. Like, what if you want to have like little mini breaks throughout your career? I think it's really important. So this is something that we actually did. So 2 years ago, just after the pandemic, when all the travel restrictions eased, we saved up some money for a round the world trip, which was really fun. So saved up some Qantas points and some money, did a round the world trip for 3 months, which was honestly really amazing. It was nice to kind of like see the world, and, you kind of realize like there's so much more to life than just going through the motions and just living to work and that's it. It's really important. And I feel like a lot of young people in particular are looking for an alternative way to kind of live, because I think a lot of us are realizing like we don't want to have to work full time from the ages of like 18 to 65. Like, I don't know about you, Owen, but when I first got my first like office job, it was great for maybe like 6 months. I was like, yay, I'm finally making enough money to like pay my rent and do my things. But then after, I'm like, oh God, is this what it's going to be like for like how many years? Like, I don't want to do this forever. And yeah, I think that it's nice to have those little mini retirements, something to look forward to, save up some money so that you can take some time off, work on a passion project. I don't know.
Yeah.
Little like farming project. I don't know, whatever you want to do, travel. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. So just give yourself a budget that you might save up for, and so it's like something that you save, and then you have an opportunity to just basically kind of live life as you want it on your own terms before you hit retirement. I like it. Cool. The final question that I've got for you, Queenie, you always bring so much fun to the show. So I'm glad, that's why I said like the book is definitely kind of, I don't know, I could feel the Queenie in the first like introduction, just in that story alone. You've told me similar stories before, but I could feel it in the frameworks and things that you go through as well. Why are ETFs like lolly bags?
Okay, so I think it's like, it's a really easy way to describe it. So basically, if you were to invest in one company, it's just kind of like going to the shops and just buying like, I don't know, a bag of strawberries and cream lollies or something like that. But an ETF is basically like a little party mix bag of lollies where you've got a bit of everything. And, just in case there's like one stock that goes down, it's okay. You've got other stocks that can balance it out. So I think it's just like a nice analogy to think of ETFs and like investing,
Yeah, I like it. I remember when I used to get like the white paper bags. I don't know if that was a thing for you, but like a white paper bag, and in there you get like all the different bits and pieces, a freckle, maybe even some Smarties or something like that. And it was really cool because it was a bit of everything. So.
I love those. Yeah. Like from like kids' birthday parties. And now it's funny being the one packing the lolly bags too, because you're like, well, it's kind of like you get to relive your childhood all over again, like becoming a parent, hey?
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. Well, Queenie, this has been heaps of fun. Thank you for venturing into the city to have this chat with us, and good luck with the book. I'll put a link in the show notes to everything, as well as all the resources that you have on social media, which is just unbelievable. Billroo as well. Once again, thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Nice. Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.